Children who are gay, who are told by their parents, and I think you already know this, some of you who either are parents now or will be parents, some of you are going to have gay children. It's not about you. You didn't make them gay. We don't know how it happens, but gay people come from every family dynamic. We do. We come from every family dynamic. So children who are gay say to themselves, when they're told by their parents, I love you, we say, and you don't hear because we say it to ourselves, would you if you knew? I'm so proud of you, son. Would you be if you knew my secret? I was involved in every civil rights struggle of my day, and I was a daily communicant, went to Mass every day, so they thought Baraein's perfect as a bridge to bring these young people back to see the church as relevant. You know, we've moved the organ to the side, we've introduced the guitar Mass, and now let's bring the young people back. And so my column was very popular, and the church asked me to host a television talk show. I was on television in my early 20s. It wasn't, you know, main station, but it was the church's cable show, and here's this young kid, you know, interviewing people coming back from the missions, and my mom and dad were so proud of me. And Dad called one time and he said, Baraien, the chairman of the board, which meant of General Motors, called to say that his wife cried when she read your Mother's Day column, we're proud of you, son. And I said to myself, you know, would you be if you knew? You know, because despite all that I had achieved in terms of respect in Michigan, I was still this very frightened, closeted, shameful man who was struggling to reconcile his sexual orientation with his spiritual beliefs. And I felt like an incredible hypocrite because I was telling you, I was invited to come speak to groups all the time, senior citizen luncheons, father-daughter communion breakfast, and my message was, you must love yourself. Right? And the voice would say to me, well, what about you? Do you love yourself? I said, leave me alone. No, no, you're telling other people to love themselves. You should tell them that you're gay and see what happens. No, if I tell them I'm gay, I'll lose everything. I said, well, then you're a hypocrite. You know? And that's what I felt like. I felt like a hypocrite, and I felt very lonely, and I felt very isolated. And so one day when I was 26, I went to the broom closet of my home, and I drank a bottle of turpentine. And then I went into the bathroom and I took all the pills in the medicine cabinet. And I sat down in the kitchen of my home and I waited to die. And some of you who are familiar with the Catholic faith might say, Baraien, how could you do that? If you commit suicide, you go to hell. I didn't believe it. I believed that once I woke up, I would be in the arms of God, and God would say, welcome home, son. I am so sorry. It was not supposed to be like this. See, I don't think it's supposed to be like this. I think we create hell in each other's lives out of our ignorance. You know, we don't mean to. It's our unconscious incompetence, but we do. You know, we beat each other up out of our fear. And I was so tired of it, and I didn't want to live anymore like that. So I drank the turpentine, took the pills, and then I started thinking about my mother and my father and how it would devastate them to lose. About my folks, I got up quickly, drove myself to the local Catholic hospital, and which was the closest one. And they said, McNaught, what are you doing here? Because they knew who I was. I told them what I did. They ran me into the emergency room. They put a tube down my nose and my throat, and they pumped my stomach. And as I sat on that table crying at 26, I promised myself that I was never again going to live my life based on people's images or expectations of me. You know, I love to be loved, and I want to be loved, but if it's based upon you thinking I'm heterosexual, it means nothing to me. I had to find a way to be in this world and grow to my full potential as someone who loved himself, and then surround myself with people who loved and supported me as myself, not who they wanted me to be. And so I went home and I told my mom and my dad, and my mother cried. She said, Baraien, the world's going to be awful to you, and there's nothing I can do about it to protect you. And Dad said, I think you've got a hormone imbalance and you'll outgrow it. With time, he accepted the reality that I was gay and I was not going to change. I took everyone at work out to lunch one by one. I did it myself. I wanted them to know I was gay. And it was wonderful. I mean, everyone was great until a reporter from the Detroit News called to say she was doing a story on homosexuality and religion and would I consent to be interviewed. because I had started the Detroit chapter of Dignity, which is a gay Catholic organization. And so I said yes, and the Detroit News had a big story about homosexuality and religion on a Saturday, and on Monday my newspaper dropped my column. They dropped my column because they had gotten lots of phone calls over the weekend from people who said, if you don't do something about him, we're going to cancel our subscriptions and our advertising. That old political economic muscle that sometimes people want to use to impact the direction of a company. And you know that people have tried to do that with other corporations on this issue too. Boycotts called of Disney or American Airlines by people who are trying to stop their support of their gay employees. Fortunately, they have not deterred companies from being supportive on this issue. In 1974, in the midst of this civil rights battle, I went on Dick Gregory's hunger fast. Do you know who he is? Dick Gregory is an African-American civil rights activist, and he, in the 1970s, several people, Dr. King and Cesar Chavez, went on hunger fast. The reason you go on him is to try to get people's attention, to say this is a serious issue, and I'm going to not eat until I get your attention and hope that you'll do something about it. And so I went on just water. On the 17th day that I was on water, the bishop said, if you will end your fast, we promise you we will work to educate the clergy, which is what I asked for, because I believe in the power of education. You know, I believe that if you give people the opportunity to learn new information, they will grow and they'll get past their fears and they will become allies. And so I ended my fast. I was subsequently fired from my job, but the bishop who fired me many, many years later said, Brian, you were ahead of your time. A lot of us have changed. We knew we weren't doing the right thing when we fired you, but we thank you for doing what you did. And that was 30 years ago. I finished my story, sat on the plane, and the fundamentalist Christian from Cobb County, Georgia, looked at me and he said, Brian, as sure as I'm sitting in this seat, I know that God had you sit next to me. That's the juice that has sort of fueled this educational effort on my part, is the encountering people who you never think you're going to reach, who, when given the opportunity to grow, decide they want to change their music. He said, you know, I can't think about this issue again without remembering you. He said, I didn't know anybody, and now I know you. And I don't want to suggest to you that I think he changed his religious beliefs. People don't do that. But what he did was no longer fear or hate me. And he was never going to talk about me in the same way because he liked me. And the same thing happened for me, right? Because he put a face on the issue for me, didn't he? Somebody says they're fundamentalist Christian, I remember the man on the plane. Right? And so that's what we do in these sessions. We build bridges of mutual understanding with one another, hopefully with the opportunity that when we're done, we go back and pick up that rope. We do so with a little more pride and a little more conviction, a little more understanding the person in front of us and behind us. I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this perspective with you. I hope it makes a difference in the journey that you're all making in this company. Thank you.